Last week, my pregnant sister asked if she and her 3 children could move into my 2-bedroom apartment because she's facing eviction from her current place. When I said no, she exploded and told our entire family that I was being selfish and heartless toward my pregnant sister and innocent nieces and nephews. But what she didn't tell them was that she'd already planned out how I would be watching her kids every day after school, most weekends, and during all school breaks, so she wouldn't have to pay for childcare. I'm 28F with no kids of my own, and I'm not willing to become a free nanny just because we share DNA. I'm 28F, and my sister Jessica is 31F. We've had a complicated relationship our whole lives, mainly because Jessica has always felt entitled to other people's help without offering much in return. She has 3 kids, Aiden who's 9, Sophia who's 7, and Mason who's 5. She's currently about 4 months pregnant with her 4th child. Jessica has been a single mother for the past 2 years since her ex-boyfriend moved out of state and stopped paying child support. She works part-time at a retail store and has been struggling financially ever since her ex left. I understand that being a single parent is incredibly difficult, and I've tried to be supportive when I can. I live alone in a nice 2-bedroom apartment that I've worked hard to afford. I have a good job in digital marketing that allows me to work from home most days, and I've finally gotten to a place in my life where I feel financially stable and independent. My 2nd bedroom is set up as a home office, and I also use it as a guest room when friends or family visit. Over the past few years, I've helped Jessica out financially several times. I've paid for groceries when she was short on money, bought school supplies for the kids, and even covered her car payment twice when she was between jobs. I've also babysat her kids numerous times, usually with very little notice when Jessica had work emergencies or social plans. The problem is that Jessica has never seemed grateful for my help. She acts like I owe her these favors because I don't have kids and make more money than she does. She's made comments about how easy my life is compared to hers and how I should be more willing to help family since I have so much free time and disposable income. 3 weeks ago, Jessica called me crying and said that her landlord was evicting her for being behind on rent. She said she had 30 days to find a new place but couldn't afford the deposits and moving costs for another apartment. Jessica asked if she and the kids could stay with me, temporarily, while she got back on her feet. My immediate reaction was panic. The idea of 4 additional people living in my 2-bedroom apartment, including 3 young children, sounded like complete chaos. But Jessica was crying and talking about how scared she was about being homeless with her kids, so I told her I'd think about it. Over the next few days, Jessica started talking about the living arrangement like it was already decided. She called several times to discuss logistics and started making plans for how everyone would fit in my apartment. During these conversations, Jessica's expectations became clear. She assumed that I would watch Aiden, Sophia, and Mason after school every day since I work from home. She also expected me to babysit on weekends when she wanted to go out or run errands alone, and she planned for me to watch them during school breaks and sick days. Jessica said that having me available for childcare would help her pick up more hours at work and maybe even find a second job. She talked about how perfect the arrangement would be because she wouldn't have to pay for after-school care or babysitters anymore. When I pointed out that watching 3 kids every day would make it impossible for me to do my actual job, Jessica said I was being dramatic. She claimed that kids Aiden and Sophia's age don't need much supervision and that I could easily work while they were around. Jessica also had specific ideas about how we'd organize the apartment. She wanted Aiden to sleep on the couch in the living room, and Sophia and Mason would share the guest bed in my office. Jessica would take my bedroom, and I would sleep on an air mattress in the living room since I stayed up late anyway. When I explained that I needed my office space to work and couldn't give up my bedroom, Jessica got frustrated. She said I was being selfish and that families make sacrifices for each other. She pointed out that her situation was temporary and that I should be willing to deal with some inconvenience to help my sister and her children. I started to realize that Jessica wasn't looking for temporary help. She was looking for a free place to live and free childcare for as long as possible. When I asked her what her timeline was for finding her own place, Jessica was vague and said it would depend on how quickly she could save money. But if I was providing free housing and free childcare, Jessica would have no incentive to move out quickly. She could save almost all of her income while I covered her living expenses and watched her kids. I also started thinking about the impact on my daily life. I work from home, but I still have deadlines, client calls, and projects that require concentration. Having 3 young children in my apartment every afternoon and evening would make it nearly impossible to be productive. Additionally, I value my personal space and quiet time. I'm not used to living with other people, especially children, and the idea of never having privacy or peace in my own home was overwhelming. 2 weeks ago, I decided to have an honest conversation with Jessica about my concerns. I told her that while I wanted to help, I couldn't commit to being her full-time childcare provider, and I couldn't give up my bedroom and office space. Jessica's reaction was immediate anger. She said I was being selfish and heartless, and that I clearly didn't care about my family. She accused me of caring more about my precious apartment than about my sister and her children being homeless. When I tried to explain that I was willing to help in other ways, like helping her look for affordable housing, giving her money for deposits, or babysitting occasionally, Jessica said that wasn't enough. She said she needed a place to live, not just temporary financial help. Jessica also made it clear that she thought I owed her this help because I didn't have my own kids to worry about. She said that since I had chosen not to have children, I should be more available to help family members who did have kids. The conversation ended with Jessica hanging up on me and not speaking to me for several days. Last week, Jessica called me back and apologized for getting angry. She said she was stressed about her housing situation and hadn't meant to take it out on me. She asked if we could revisit the idea of her moving in temporarily. During this conversation, Jessica tried a different approach. Instead of demanding that I watch her kids, she suggested that we could share childcare responsibilities. She said that since I work from home, it would be easy for me to keep an eye on the kids when they got home from school, and in return, she would help with housework and cooking. But when I pressed for details about this arrangement, it became clear that Jessica still expected me to be the primary caregiver for her children. She talked about how I could set the kids up with activities or screen time while I worked, and how they were old enough to entertain themselves most of the time. Jessica also mentioned that having the kids around would be good practice for me in case I ever decided to have my own children. She seemed to think that being a live-in aunt would be some kind of learning experience that I should be grateful for. I realized that Jessica fundamentally didn't understand or respect my work or my lifestyle. She saw my work-from-home job as basically being unemployed, and she thought my child-free life meant I had unlimited time and energy to devote to her family. I told Jessica that I couldn't agree to the living arrangement she was proposing, but that I was still willing to help her in other ways. I offered to lend her money for an apartment deposit, help her look for housing assistance programs, and babysit occasionally when she had genuine emergencies. Jessica became furious again. She said that I was abandoning my family when they needed me most, and that she couldn't believe I was willing to let my sister and her children become homeless rather than deal with a little inconvenience. She also said that our parents would be ashamed of me when they found out how selfish I was being. Jessica threatened to tell our whole family about my refusal to help, and she said everyone would see what kind of person I really was. I told Jessica that she was welcome to tell her family anything she wanted, but that my decision was final. I said I loved her and the kids, but I couldn't sacrifice my home, my career, and my sanity to solve her housing crisis. Jessica hung up on me again, and I didn't hear from her for 3 days. Then the family phone calls started. My mother called first, crying and asking how I could turn my back on Jessica and the kids. She said Jessica had told her that I'd refused to help at all, and that I'd said I didn't care if they ended up on the streets. When I tried to explain my side of the story, my mother interrupted and said that family comes first, and that I should be ashamed of myself for prioritizing my comfort over my sister's safety. My father called next, and was even more direct. He said I was being selfish and immature, and that I needed to grow up and help my family. He said that if I didn't let Jessica move in, he would never forgive me for letting his grandchildren suffer. My aunt and uncle also called, both expressing disappointment in my decision. They said they'd always thought I was a caring person, but that my refusal to help Jessica showed my true character. None of these family members asked for my perspective or seemed interested in understanding why I'd made this decision. They'd all heard Jessica's version of events, which apparently didn't include the part about her expecting me to become a full-time, unpaid nanny. When I tried to explain to my mother that Jessica had expected me to watch her kids every day and give up my bedroom and office, my mother said that those were small sacrifices to make for family. She said that when you love someone, you do whatever it takes to help them. I started to feel like I was going crazy. Was I really being as selfish and heartless as everyone was telling me? Was I wrong to prioritize my own needs over my sister's crisis? But then I remembered all the times Jessica had taken advantage of my help in the past, and how she'd never shown real appreciation for my support. I thought about how she'd immediately started making demands and assumptions about my life, without considering how her plans would affect me. I also realized that none of my family members were offering to help Jessica themselves. My parents have a 3-bedroom house and could easily accommodate Jessica and the kids, but they hadn't volunteered their space. My aunt and uncle were quick to judge my decision but weren't offering alternative solutions. Yesterday, Jessica showed up at my apartment with all 3 kids in tow. She said she'd been officially evicted and had nowhere else to go. She asked if she could at least stay for one night while she figured out other options. I felt terrible seeing the kids looking confused and upset, but I also knew that if I let Jessica in for one night, it would turn into the permanent arrangement she'd originally wanted. I told Jessica that I couldn't let her stay, but I offered to pay for a hotel room for a few nights while she contacted social services or other family members for help. I also gave her the phone numbers for several housing assistance programs I'd researched. Jessica started crying and begging, saying she had no other options and that I was forcing her children to be homeless. Aiden asked why Aunt Sarah didn't want them to stay, and I felt like the worst person in the world. But I held firm and drove Jessica and the kids to a nearby hotel, where I paid for 3 nights and gave Jessica additional money for food. I told her I loved her and the kids, but that she needed to find other solutions for her housing crisis. As I left the hotel, Jessica screamed at me that I was dead to her and that I'd never see her or her children again. She said I was a horrible person and that she hoped I was happy with my selfish decision. Now I'm second-guessing everything. My family is barely speaking to me, and I keep thinking about those kids and wondering if I made the wrong choice. But I also know that Jessica's problems aren't really my responsibility and that letting her move in would have destroyed my life without actually solving her issues long-term. Update: 1 week later. The situation with my family has gotten worse over the past week. Jessica has been posting on social media about how her heartless sister abandoned her and her children during their time of need. She's shared photos of the kids looking sad and has written long posts about the struggles of being a single mother without family support. Several extended family members and family friends have reached out to me expressing their shock and disappointment. Most of them have only heard Jessica's version of events, which paints me as someone who refused to help at all rather than someone who refused to become a live-in nanny. My mother called me 3 more times this week, each conversation ending with her crying and saying she doesn't understand how she raised such a selfish daughter. She keeps saying that when she was young, families helped each other no matter what, and that my generation is too focused on individualism. But I also found out some interesting information from my cousin Mark, who has been staying out of the family drama but wanted to give me a heads up about what was really going on. According to Mark, Jessica had been planning this move for months. She'd been telling people at work that she was going to move in with her sister who would watch her kids for free, and she'd been looking forward to not having to pay for childcare anymore. Mark also told me that Jessica had never actually looked for other housing options. She'd been banking on me saying yes and hadn't applied for any assistance programs or contacted other family members about help. Most importantly, Mark revealed that my parents had actually offered to let Jessica stay with them temporarily, but Jessica had turned them down. She told them that it would be better for the kids to stay with me because I had more space and worked from home. What Jessica had told my parents was that she preferred staying with me because she knew I wouldn't interfere with her parenting or set rules for her kids, whereas our parents would definitely have expectations about bedtimes, chores, and behavior. Learning this information made me feel both vindicated and frustrated. Jessica had manipulated the entire situation to make me look like the bad guy, when she'd actually had other options available. Update: 3 weeks later. Jessica ended up moving in with our parents after all. According to my mother, Jessica, finally, asked for their help when she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. But the living arrangement is apparently not going well. My mother has called me twice to complain about how difficult it is to have 4 additional people in their house, and how exhausted she is from watching Jessica's kids while Jessica works. My mother said that Aiden, Sophia, and Mason don't follow rules, don't help with chores, and expect to be entertained constantly. She also said that Jessica leaves for work and doesn't come home until late, leaving my parents to handle dinner, homework, and bedtime routines. My father is apparently frustrated because he can't relax in his own home anymore, and because Jessica has made no efforts to find her own place. According to my mother, Jessica has been spending money on new clothes and going out with friends instead of saving for an apartment deposit. My mother told me that she's starting to understand why I was hesitant to let Jessica move in, but she still thinks I should have helped anyway, because that's what family does. I've maintained no contact with Jessica, but I did send birthday gifts for Sophia and Mason when they had birthdays this month. Jessica didn't acknowledge the gifts or let the kids thank me, which shows that she's still angry about my refusal to house her family. Update: 2 months later. The drama in my family has continued to escalate. Jessica is still living with our parents, and according to my cousin Mark, it's causing serious stress on their marriage and finances. My father apparently told Jessica last week that she needs to find her own place within the next month, which led to a huge fight. Jessica accused him of trying to make his grandchildren homeless and said that if he really loved his family, he would let them stay as long as necessary. My mother is caught in the middle and is exhausted from essentially raising 3 additional children while Jessica works minimal hours and spends most of her free time on her phone or out with friends. The situation has also revealed some truths about Jessica's financial management. My parents discovered that Jessica has been receiving child support from her ex. He's been sending money directly to her, not to the state, which is why she claimed he wasn't paying anything. Jessica has also been receiving government assistance for food and childcare, but she's been spending that money on non-essential items because she knew our parents would provide food and free babysitting. My mother finally apologized to me last week for pressuring me to let Jessica move in. She said she understands now why I was concerned about being taken advantage of, and she wishes she had listened to my perspective before judging my decision. But the family relationships are still strained. Jessica has poisoned several extended family members against me, and many of them still believe her version of events where I heartlessly abandoned my pregnant sister. Update: 6 months later. Jessica finally moved out of our parents' house last month, but not because she found her own place. She moved in with a new boyfriend she'd been dating for about 6 weeks. According to my mother, Jessica met this guy online and had been sneaking out to see him while my parents watched her kids. When my father gave her the ultimatum about finding her own housing, Jessica announced that she was moving in with her new boyfriend and taking the kids with her. My parents were concerned about Jessica moving her children into a stranger's home so quickly, but Jessica said they didn't get a say in her decisions since they were kicking her out anyway. The new living situation apparently isn't going well either. My mother heard through Jessica's coworker that the boyfriend is getting frustrated with having 3 young children around all the time, and that Jessica is struggling to manage her kids' behavior in someone else's home. I've had minimal contact with my family during this time, and I haven't seen my nieces and nephews at all. Jessica has maintained her position that I'm dead to her, and she's prevented the kids from having any relationship with me. But I've also felt a sense of relief and validation. Watching how Jessica treated our parents' generosity confirmed that I made the right decision in refusing to let her move in with me. If I had said yes, Jessica would have taken over my apartment, destroyed my work productivity, and stayed indefinitely without any gratitude or respect for my sacrifices. Final update: 1 year later. It's been a year since Jessica asked to move in with me, and I can honestly say I'm grateful I stood my ground. Jessica's relationship with the boyfriend ended after about 4 months, and she moved into a subsidized housing apartment with the kids. She had her 4th baby 3 months ago, and from what I hear through family, she's struggling to manage 4 children on her own. My relationship with my parents has mostly recovered. They've admitted that they understand why I couldn't take on the responsibility of housing Jessica's family, and they've apologized for pressuring me and questioning my character. My father especially has acknowledged that Jessica has a pattern of taking advantage of people's generosity and not taking responsibility for her own problems. He said that watching her behavior while she lived with him opened his eyes to dynamics he hadn't seen before. I still have no relationship with Jessica or her children, which makes me sad but also feels necessary for my own well-being. Jessica has never apologized for her demands, her manipulation, or her attempts to turn our family against me. Some extended family members still believe Jessica's version of events and think I was wrong to refuse help during her crisis. But I've learned that I can't control other people's opinions, and I'm at peace with my decision. I've also learned a lot about boundaries and the difference between helping someone and enabling them. Giving Jessica temporary financial help or occasional babysitting was helping. Allowing her to move in and take over my life would have been enabling her to avoid dealing with her real problems. The experience has actually strengthened my relationships with the family members who took the time to understand my perspective and who supported my right to make decisions about my own life. I'm still child-free by choice, still love my quiet apartment, and still have a successful career that requires focus and dedication. I occasionally wonder about my nieces and nephews and hope they're doing well, but I don't regret protecting my own well-being and autonomy. The moral of the story: you're not obligated to sacrifice your life to solve someone else's problems, even if they're family. Helping people and enabling people are 2 different things, and real family members should respect your boundaries even when they don't like your decisions. Also, when someone asks for help but comes with a detailed plan for how you'll provide that help, pay attention to whether they're actually asking or just expecting you to comply with their demands. And finally, don't let guilt manipulation cloud your judgment about what you can realistically handle and what you're genuinely responsible for in other people's lives.